Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be discussing what was it like to be a letting agent. I briefly was a letting agent during the summer between first and second year and third year at university. It was quite an enjoyable experience. I'll start off with how I found the role. So I was looking for a placement, mainly in an engineering firm, as that's what my course dictates. And I was looking on the university forums and I found that a local letting agent, I say the local, it was best in South Manchester, was looking for potential placement offers. So I just applied along with every other placement that was on there. And they got back to me. I went and had an interview with the manager there, and I got the position. He's a lovely bloke, and it enabled me to understand the lettings industry from a very professional standpoint, and it allowed me to see potential gaps in my own techniques that I used and ways to improve them. So I really did enhance my skills by working there. It was quite useful for me. Moving into what the role offered for me, again to increase my professionalism as a landlord and potentially as a letting agent in the future, I feel like I became more professional. Enhance my soft skills. So one thing that I talked about in Starting Young, one of the episodes I did a few weeks ago, is I really wanted to enhance my soft skills, because the skills that we learn now as young adults we will carry through for the rest of our lives. So it's very useful to gain those soft skills now. The next section I want to move on to is what I could offer the company. So why would the letting agent want to offer the job to me? Or if you were applying for a job, then what can you offer the company? If you've worked in previous industries, you're going to have transferable soft skills, which you can use to apply for these sort of jobs. I found that my people skills, my ability to talk, my ability to sell, and my ability to get through large amounts of paperwork relatively quickly was something that would be of use to them. I'm going to move on to what sort of tasks I was doing day to day in a minute. But really showing those to the people that are interviewing you really puts you a step ahead when applying for a role. Next thing I want to go on to is what I did on a day-to-day basis. So as a letting agent, what you will do on a day-to-day basis. Now, it depends on how big the agency is, number one, and number two, it can depend on what role you play within said agencies. So there's multiple things that you can kind of do. You can take new properties on board, so you can speak to landlords and get properties on board within the agency. This normally comes with some form of commission. It did with my agency. You can look at tenant applications. You can perform viewings. You can perform inventories. You can perform credit checks, and you can perform like the paperwork, such as right to rent checks, issuing handbooks, or you can do every single bit of the process, which is what makes you a complete letting agent, and that's what most of the agents did in the agency that I work for. I found this was quite good, as it enabled all the full-time agents to become a more rounded letting agent, and also it gives the customer, both the potential tenant and the landlord, the same person to talk to, which gives it a more personal feel, which again is important when it comes to building that sort of relationship, which I emphasise on this channel quite a lot. It is important to relationship build. Now, talking in sort of generic terms, specifically what I did on a day-to-day basis. When I first started, I found myself learning their new systems and understanding how their processes worked. And this is important just to kind of bring me up to speed to what they were doing. So I'd be running a lot of credit checks, I'd be looking through some forms of application, and I'd be doing some viewings every now and again. That was kind of like my day-to-day. And then towards the end, I would do a lot of inventories. And now the inventories were really good for me, because I was able to learn about what other landlords were doing, which was really, really useful. And by learning what other landlords were doing with their properties, what they were renting it out for, what sort of condition it was in, that would really affect me, positively affect me in terms of what I knew about property and what I knew people were aiming for. And I could also look at how many applicants were applying for which sort of houses and how much they were willing to pay. And by having a large number of applicants, it increases your chance of getting a really good tenant, which is essentially what you want. You want a good tenant, you want someone that's going to be more likely to pay the rent, which is really, really useful. So bringing it on to the last factor is of what I learned. So throughout my time at the agency, I learned more interpersonal skills. Again, I really enhanced the interpersonal skills, and what I learned property-wise is how thorough application forms need to be, how thorough references need to be, both landlord credit checks, employee checks, and guarantor forms and I really learned how legally binding they need to be and how bulletproof legally they need to be, getting them checked by a solicitor. Another thing as well is tenancy agreements. They had generic tenancy agreements for single lets, for multi-lets or HMOs, which were important to understand. It was very useful to understand how they structured their contracts. Again, legally, to make sure that you're not going to be stabbed or shot in the foot in the future, for example, a non-paying tenant, and the contract's not making them liable based on a contract that you've given to the tenant. So that's important. What you can take away from that is you can get the generic one. There's loads of tenancy agreements off the internet, but it is important to get that checked by a solicitor that you trust, or someone that you trust, or someone that's in a position to do so. Not even someone that you trust, someone that's got the training to check those application forms and those tenancy agreements, to make sure that, again, they're legally bulletproof, and to know what your responsibilities are as someone that's vending the tenants and someone that's letting to the tenants, generally as a landlord. You need to make sure that you're following within the guidelines of the government. Now, I learned about the right to rent checks. I learned that you have to issue them with a government specified how to rent guide. This all has to be done. Something that I already knew outside, but is worth mentioning in this video anyway, is you have to give them a gas cert. The gas has to be a gas cert or gas certificate has to be valid. It's valid for 1 year, needs to be redone every year. It's like an MOT on your boiler essentially. This has to be done on all gas boilers. So if you've got a combi boiler, it needs to be done. And again, this is really useful. So my experience as a whole, as a letting agent, it was positive. Based on the experiences, it was positive. It was enjoyable. I did enjoy the amount of freedom that I got. But this isn't a how to be a letting agent channel. This is a property channel. So if you're young, you're under 20, you're maybe not in full-time employment, maybe full-time education, I would recommend getting a part-time job as a letting agent, just to see, and if you want to get into property, just to see if it's for you, and to take and to learn, because you can really use these skills as a landlord, and it will save you a lot of money, because again, you can let your own houses, you know how to deal with tenants, and it's just generally very useful. Every time you let a house, you'll save £500-600 on letting fees if you do it yourself. So you let 3 houses, or you let 1 house for 3 years, you've saved nearly £2,000. It's very useful to do that, which is great. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, then please like it. We've got a lot more videos in the pipeline, so if you like what you see, subscribe to us for weekly videos. I'll see you in the next one.